Welcome to Threatsafe. This is our podcast to help SMEs and SMBs and the people who manage IT within those businesses or responsible for IT to get the very best from the technology that they deploy and then also to manage their cyber security. Let's listen to this week's podcast. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 4, I'm just checking, of Threatsafe. I'm Martin Roberts, Managing Director of New Ways, and
I'm Toby Stevenson, Chief Technology Officer at New Ways.
You see, we practice every week, and we get there. It'll be perfect sometime soon. Last time we talked about this concept of the different types of attitude to IT, Toby. Which was quite interesting. Took me back a few years. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was that super laggard, Me Too, leading edge and bleeding edge. Also had different types of budgeting mechanisms and spending types and such like. And I think I'd like to talk about that a little bit more this time, because every year, if you're a CEO, CFO, IT manager, someone who's responsible for IT but not necessarily delivering IT, one of the times that you will really love is budgeting for the next 12 months or 3 years, or in some cases, in my history, 5 years, which is about as good as me forecasting the next 5 months. And I know you've been involved in putting together costs and such like over the years, Toby. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could talk about how it's changed, because not that long ago, people were going out and buying servers and all the attendant stuff and big software purchases, and it was a lot of capital expenditure. And now it's shifted. It's fair to say.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that the proliferation of cloud services has definitely shifted that solution acquisition model, let's say.
Yeah, and I think it makes it easier in a way. The one thing that always used to be a problem is you do the big IT budget, and a lot of that was about when are we going to replace the server farms, all that.
Or the PC estate or something like that.
Oh, absolutely horrendous. And then the associated software, which was lots of bits of unknown, because you'd be buying this for these users and things like that, those users and such like. And they were never right. Two types of forecasts. Somebody told me this many years ago, a consultant, ERP consultant. He said, Martin, there are 2 types of forecast: lucky and lousy. And if you're good, you get you. If you're lucky, you get lucky. So budgeting these days for subscription software is about numbers of users. And the one thing, if you're managing as an IT manager, when the CFO says to you, do me a budget for the next 2 to 3 years, or 1 to 3 years, the first response is, tell me how many people you're going to have, because we can work out from there what the spend is going to be. What these days would not necessarily be, can you think about that wouldn't be OpEx these days? What's the big projects which still may come along, Toby?
I suppose if there are still physical server infrastructure, that would still require that purchase. PC and laptop estate changes can often still be CapEx purchases.
Yeah.
Networking and cabling, so replacing all the networking gear, the Wi-Fi, new cabling. Because cabling needs replacing every so often; it doesn't last forever. They're probably the biggest ones. Some software for on-premise still would be capitalized, but the vast majority is pushed out into that monthly recurring model.
And I guess there's a couple of ways of looking at it. One is that monthly recurring model which we call Office Productivity, Office 365 and such like. Quite easy to track. Is if you can work out with the help of your MSP or IT provider which license you actually need. Which has that got simpler over the last couple of years, or has it got more complex?
Um, I think both. I think in some ways it's more complex because you can kind of you often find yourself in a situation where you can do 90% of what you want to do, and then you either have to just accept your lot or you have to then try and find an add-on part.
Yeah.
And there's more and more choice than ever of what permutations to choose, and invariably there's a series of breadcrumbs that leads you to spending on the most expensive license that's there because you want to do all the things.
But there's also, I mean, let's try and be nice about these people for a few minutes. Well, it does remain difficult. Sometimes they'll include you get the more you spend. Would it be fair to say you get better value? I'm just thinking about defence and cybersecurity.
You do to a point. It really depends on if you're going to leverage those extra features. You buy the top license, you get more stuff in it. If you're going to use all of that stuff, then you can perhaps make a case to say actually it's better value than buying a smaller license and then some piecemeal third-party products. One of the big advantages with Microsoft stuff is it's really well integrated.
Yes.
So it creates a compelling argument to say, don't go and get a third party, use what comes in the license. So it therefore then creates its own justification for buying a bigger license.
Yeah. So if you're budgeting as a business, forecasting as a business, we've got those office productivity products which are billed monthly. Oh, and by the way, this model is not for our convenience entirely. Of course, what used to happen, of course, is that every 3 to 5 years, Microsoft or whoever would do a big release of new software, the Office X and Office Y, and you'd have to go and get all new licenses, which is always a bit of a merry-go-round and great fun because of all the different options there, and then you'd pay. Then the nerve to charge an annual maintenance fee, so you had access to the latest features and such like. And budgeting for that was always quite difficult. It's like 3 years, 5 years. Can the business hold off for another couple of years before we do this? Where now it is a lot easier. But let's face it, why does the monthly model work? It works for the vendors above all else because they've got this guaranteed income stream that is very regular, very predictable, and it's very, very nice. And this is why those companies are often bigger than countries in terms of the money they make, or GDP. So it works very much then, but in a way it does work for us. It does make it easier. One of the benefits in theory, depending on the licensing model, is that you can scale up and scale down the number of users. Yeah. Okay. So then we'll talk about this next time, I think, to some degree. Actually, no, let's talk about it now. No, very few companies are actually all in cloud or all on premise these days. We're getting to this. We're in this hybrid situation. There's been a shift, hasn't there, but there's lots more people doing it. And it's a bit of a legacy of old systems which they can't ship out. They can't go to subscription, which they need to retain, like their business system, their ERP system, and the new modern subscription things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, businesses that are starting out, would be probably well advised just to consume cloud services. It would make little sense to use the traditional way of building out IT systems. You start off as a one or two person band, and then as you grow, you just pay more for the services that you're consuming. But organisations that were working and running before the cloud revolution, if we want to call it that, they've got this baggage, this legacy environment that they have got to consider, and a lot of SMBs actually fit the bill quite well for moving completely to cloud services. As long as it suits their cycle of investment and where the system's at. A lot of organizations are moving from very simple on-premise server-based systems to something more sophisticated, proper ERP or proper CRM systems, and it makes sense to adopt a cloud-first approach with those things. It's the mid-market and the enterprise that probably struggle more because they've got more of these things that are more monolithic. They're harder to lift and shift because they are just so big and supporting so many users, and that shape and size of the application doesn't necessarily lend itself well to a cloud migration, and there may not be something that is appropriately affordable to replace the functionality.
I think we'll talk about that legacy in a future episode, actually. It's a very big challenge for businesses, and realizing the value from those investments and getting the tail end of what you invested in already. It's very, very, it's quite a profound argument to have and a thing to realize. Okay, so I guess the other thing that has changed with the subscription model as well is actually, and this is probably, well, you tell me if I'm misinterpreting this term, but security is a later bolt-on add-on to our where we work, and actually there's probably, if we look at all the systems out there, from the legacy systems, which are CapEx and all those to OpEx, there's a lot more cloud-based security than there is the legacy office productivity stuff. Is that fair to say?
I think it is, and certainly that security is typically more accessible in a cloud first world versus that legacy on-premise. So a great example would be multi-factor authentication. It's really, really hard to do that with a server-only infrastructure. You might say, well, we don't need it because it's all behind the firewall and nobody ever does, but it's really hard to do that. And enterprises can do that because they can afford the infrastructure to do that. But an organization with a single server, they can't do that. It's just overkill. Whereas you think of something like M365 and MFA is there, and it's easy to turn on. And so it's made it more accessible. It has maybe go as far as saying security has been democratized as a result of the cloud. It's allowed it to filter down to much smaller organizations that would otherwise have been unable to afford it.
Well, you stole my thunder there, Tony. I was about to shout out. It's democratized security for the masses, because the reality is it has. Because I remember, we used to sit down with big organizations when we were talking about what they were going to spend on things similar to MFA, that security thing, and we'd be saying, "Wow, they're going to spend that much money. This is brilliant. Everyone should have this." But my goodness, we can't. How can we bring these to the businesses that we serve? The majority of businesses that we serve, there are businesses that we serve then and today who can afford that, and then there's some who just couldn't. And that's what I suppose the huge benefit of this new model is, and this new model. It suddenly does make it accessible to everybody.
It does, and I think the only slight caveat or the slight frustration I would have is that, and many vendors are guilty of this, not all of them, but a lot of vendors are guilty of this, is that a lot of the security is only available after a certain license level. And actually it feels like security should be available to everybody. Things like conditional access in M365, it's only available above a certain license level. If you take the
explain that first before we talk about it.
Okay, so conditional access is kind of what it says on the tin. It's a series of rules and policies that say, in order for you to use the system, you have to meet these conditions in order to access.
Examples?
You must have MFA in order to log onto the system. You must be coming from an approved country. You must have a computer that is secure and managed by the organization.
Okay. No, good. Okay. Yeah, and I think that is a frustration, because we would like more people to have access to that at a lower licensing level.
Yeah, and some of these things from a Microsoft perspective are there in some capacity with the very lowest licenses. So actually, probably the and I can't, I'm not going to name and shame anybody around this, but there are certain vendors, well-known vendors, that will charge you extra to turn MFA on. Now that just seems like it's completely wrong. There are certain vendors that will charge you more money to use single sign-on. So this is where you reuse your 365 credentials to sign into their application. The idea being is that you have one set of credentials, they're really strong and robust, and they're monitored, rather than having a different set of credentials for every single system. So single sign-on, again, behind that paywall, that license wall, is really frustrating. Logging features, that show what people have done and how long those logs are kept for. Again, there's certain things that you would expect. They don't cost the vendor a lot of money. What they're really doing is they are trying to wring you out for some more cash.
They're trying to maximise the value for their shareholders.
Exactly, at the expense of the buying public, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily. And I suppose where you're in a world where long-term relationships, you don't have to work too hard to maintain them, then I suppose it's a different story. Hey, look, we could go down a bit of a rabbit hole there, Toby, talking about vendors and such like. As the type of people that we are, who are this bridge between end user companies and the IT industry, the vendors and such like, we sit in a very privileged place, and we see the good and the bad of each. Let's say we'll concentrate on the good ones in future. Toby, that's been very useful, and I'm glad we both, you got there first, the democratization of security features. So thank you everybody for listening and watching this week. If you've sustained the watching thing, very well done. Toby, thank you very much indeed for the input there. Really much appreciated. And everyone, we'll hope to see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Threatsafe. We hope you found it enjoyable and informative. Please reach out with any comments, feedback, questions, and we look forward to seeing you soon.